Here's my synopsis on my thesis over Sigmund Freud's impact on psychology, philosophy, and culture in the 20s and subsequently from there. Following the Great War, the First World War, there is this modernist posture in the United States. And that need, or that desire really, is being filled by Freud, who's a prominent psychologist around this time. And his ideas really base themselves psychologically in the subconscious. And he tackles the subconscious un- unlike anyone has prior. He really founds this idea of psychoanalysis. Psychoanalysis is this practice of retrieving conflicts or solving conflicts or issues psychologically through something like free association, um, where an analyst would allow the patient to express their dreams freely uh, without any sort of pressure. And why he looks at the subconscious, he thinks dreams are essentially an expression of wishes, and there's the manifest content, what you see in the dream, and the latent content, what's in the dream's meaning. The meaning is what we're attacking. The interpretation of dreams is the title of his work. Uh, and this really stems, all these problems he posits stem from childhood repression and sexual primitive desires from childhood as well. And he has theories such as the Oedipus complex, where a young child has a sexual desire primitively for the opposite sex parent, and kind of a jealousy between the same sex parent. This matures and develops after puberty into a more autonomous sexual desire. And this really does play out, of course, psychoanalysis with like pediatric dentistry, for example, where we have people calming down neurodivergent or patients or children who are afraid of the dentist, right? That's a very applicable example in the modern context. And Freud's ideas are also based on this idea of the mind being in parts, the id, the ego, and the superego. The id is this hunger, these carnal desires. The superego is the moral instinct, and the ego is the harmonization of the two, the rational. Um, of course, this all has psychological, or pardon me, philosophical implications with it. Freud wanted to say that he was purely empirical. You'd like to say he thought philosophy was more of a product of the human desire and its evolution and so forth. But there are really philosophical implications. French philosopher Paul Ricoeur would note that this sort of resembles his work Aristotelian Formal Cause. He's claiming that the identity of something is made from its parts, the id, superego, and ego, right? And is more of a hermeneutical based framework, which is interpretation, which is inherently philosophical. But of course, some would say, well, narrowing it down to purely hermeneutics, purely interpretation, is not what he's doing. That would undermine psychological progress that Freud's clearly impacting psychology. So, of course, the harmonization of those two ends of the spectrum would simply be to say hermeneutics is a thoroughfare in between natural science and the humanities. And so, all that to say, Freud is creating this great interplay of science, psychological discovery, and philosophy. And this really bleeds into the culture of the United States, especially in literature and the arts. You'll see people like D.H. Lawrence on Sons and Lovers, which really displays the Oedipus complex that he talks about, or James Joyce in his work Finnegan's Wake. And not just in literature, but also in the American posture, you see there's a kind of a reason to go have sex, a reason to fulfill these desires, right? That may not be a proper interpretation of Freud's work, but people are using it nonetheless. It's obviously impacting the culture. And on an institutional scientific level, this is very true as well. By 1916, you see over 500 psychoanalysts in New York City alone. And so this Freudian theory and mindset is really perseverating in the American psyche, if you will, um, pretty early on. And so, what Freud does, regardless of what you think of his ideas or how you contest them, it's uncontested that his ideas are etched into the United States uh, at this time and furthermore. So, Freud changed rapidly. Psychology, philosophy, and of course, culture in the United States. And that's all I have to say about that. Thank you very much.